Stalker 2 is finally here after a long wait, and as somebody who has never played a Stalker game before and just finished clocking in around 25 hours in Stalker 2, I have some thoughts. Stalker 2 was easily my most anticipated game of the year. I've always thought that it looked so great, and it's easily the best game of this year in my opinion. But that's not to say that it doesn't have its problems, because it most definitely does. So what I want to do is go over the problems and then we can get into the great stuff. You may have already heard by now, or at least seen online, that the game is in a bad state when it comes to performance, and I honestly have to say I had no issues with the performance of the game generally speaking, so maybe I just got extremely lucky on my Xbox. While the controls do feel extremely clunky, the rest of the game runs fine. Like, the actual game runs fine. In these roughly 25 hours, I've stuttered twice and crashed once. Going into Stalker 2, I was really hoping for a new post-apocalyptic game with great gunplay and exploration, and sadly, I can't say that I got that. While the game is a good, even great game, it just isn't what I was hoping for, but I am still enjoying my time with it. I just thought that my experience would be a little bit different. I think the worst thing for me when it comes to Stalker 2 is either the combat or the exploration. Starting with the combat, like I've already said, it is extremely clunky, like with the controls and stuff. But the combat is just annoying at times as well. The combat itself would be fun if the controls weren't clunky. It's the issues that are, like, it's less about the way it plays rather than the way how enemies work. At times, you can see in these clips, you would just get hordes of dogs or other small animal creatures coming at you constantly, to the point where it just feels like they're spawning behind you as soon as you turn your back in any direction. And it just became irritating, like it wasn't fun at all. Not only because the combat is so clunky, but because ammo is so difficult not to waste. So you would get these sort of clusters of like creature enemies. This never happened with actual like human NPCs, by the way, but you would get these sort of clusters of enemies and you would spend all of your ammo on them. Like, you would just empty magazine after magazine after magazine because they just would not stop spawning. Then you're left with no ammo for the next mission unless you want to stop everything you're doing to go and explore and hope you find some. As mentioned, if the controls weren't so stiff and rough, fighting a ton of enemies like this probably wouldn't be a problem, but it becomes a problem when the combat is not that great. Also, there were times where I would clear out an entire area and look around trying to find that group's stash, and I would walk like 10 feet away from where the fight was and the enemies would just respawn behind me, which is annoying, especially in a more challenging game like this. And by the way, the game is not that difficult. If you're like me and find games that are overly difficult just for the sake of being difficult boring, don't worry, Stalker 2 is not like that. I actually really like the level of difficulty Stalker 2 brings on its medium difficulty. I apologise, I can't remember what its medium difficulty is called. But yeah, I like the difficulty. It's not like a Souls-like where the game is just hard to be hard. This feels more like a realistic hard rather than a, hey, look at how cool and difficult our game is shit that you see in every single Souls-like game. And very quickly, I also want to say that this game easily has the worst motion blur I have ever experienced in a game. Like, it is nothing short of fucking awful, and you cannot turn it off. You can see it in the clip here, like you can physically see it. This was making my eyes hurt. So if you are like super sensitive to motion blur and stuff like that, you unfortunately, until they release a patch that comes with a setting to turn it off, you should avoid this game. Anyway, quickly moving on, then we have the exploration, which is just fine. Like, it's pretty basic. It's not bad by any means, but it also just isn't very good. Like, it doesn't stand out. You're only really going to be finding the same 5 items: food/drink, ammo, guns you've probably already seen, health items, and if you are extremely lucky, a new outfit. And on top of the same old loot again and again and again, the places you explore are not all that interesting, which really upsets me to say, but I've got to be 100% honest. There's just never really anything there besides, again, the same old loot again and again and again, like, you know, some combat, and there's just like no environmental storytelling, and that really bummed me out. Again, the game is good. I don't want anybody to think that I just hate this game, because I don't. I really do enjoy it. It just isn't what I was hoping for, is what I'm trying to say. Also, I do feel I should say, since the developers of the game have stated a few times that the quote vast majority of locations are enterable, as in you can go inside most buildings and explore, no you cannot. I'm constantly walking up to buildings, looking around, and there is no way in at all. The majority of the buildings in Stalker 2 are sadly not enterable or explorable, I'm sorry to say. But hey, let's move on to some of the good stuff. When the combat works, it is really enjoyable. There are times where it suddenly feels less clunky and stiff, which does lead me to believe that the controls are somehow bugged right now and will hopefully be fixed at some point, or at least changed a little bit. But of course I can't be sure about that. The story is also quite interesting, especially some of these side quests are quite fun, and I think that the animations are some of the best I've seen in gaming in a very, very, very long time. I love that every single gun, food, and drink item all have their own animations, so I do want to give huge props to the devs for that. The game graphically is stunning when it's not nighttime. The nighttime in Stalker 2 is way too dark, and the flashlight you get is honestly one of the most useless flashlights I've ever seen in the game. It doesn't do much besides let you see like 1 foot in front of you. Unless you're in a building, then it will light up the building, but when you're outside, it does nothing. And when I say dark, I mean dark. Like I was squinting at my screen trying to see what I'm even doing, even with the flashlight on. But yeah, besides the darkness and some of the NPC's faces, the game is gorgeous to look at. I often found myself just sort of slowly walking around to just take it all in. The game doesn't have many loading screens, which is obviously a huge thing. That's great, and it honestly surprised me. However, the startup loading screen is quite long. It's not like, you know, GTA 5 long, but what is, right? But you will be waiting like a solid minute or so to actually get into the game, at least on Xbox. Not a deal breaker for me at least, but I just wanted to throw it out there. Look, overall, I genuinely like the game a lot. I think that the team did some amazing work here, and I think that some things just feel a little lackluster. Like there could have been more, they could have done a little bit more. I don't see myself playing Stalker 2 for 1,000 hours like I would say a Bethesda game, but as mentioned, it is a great game and I do recommend that you all check it out, especially if you like post-apocalyptic games. This is probably the second best post-apocalyptic game since Fallout 4 released, in my opinion anyway. And there is one game that I would put above Stalker 2, but yeah, easily a top 3 post-apocalyptic game of the last like 9 or 10 years. Anyway, that is my review for Stalker 2. Too long didn't watch. It's a great game, but not what I was hoping for, and that's fine, and I'm excited to see the future of this game and to continue playing it, and I heavily suggest that you all check it out. If you enjoyed the video, please do leave it with a like and consider subscribing if you want to stay up to date on some other reviews and mostly RPG coverage. Lastly, as always, a huge thank you to our channel members for their continued support towards myself and the channel as a whole. It really means a lot, guys, but with all of that said and done, we are going to wrap up, so thank you all so much for watching, and I really hope to see you next time. Peace.